Now, from Washington, CNN political commentators, Democratic strategist Maria Cardona, and Republican strategist Alice Stewart. Thank you both so much for joining me this morning. Maria, let's begin with you. Just your reaction to the historical, jurisprudential, and political significance of this indictment.
Yeah, it is jaw-dropping, Bianca, and I think that we all have to take a step back and wait until we understand what is actually in the indictment. I know that it is overwhelming to look at this from a political standpoint, from a historical standpoint, from a legal standpoint, but until we actually take a look and see what's in it, we can't really judge and measure what the outcome is going to be. What we do know right now, Bianca, is that this was an indictment that didn't come from the DA Alvin Bragg, that didn't come from Democrats and liberals. It came from a grand jury that is made up of everyday, hardworking, conscientious Americans from all walks of life who were presented evidence from over 5 years of work and decided that there was more than enough to move forward with an indictment of a former president of the United States. And the DA is not dumb. He understands that everything is on the line for him and that he is not going to go forward with a case that he doesn't believe is absolutely completely solid. So all of this hype and screaming out of the top of their lungs from Republicans about how unfair this is, I think is just another attempt to let Donald Trump off the hook. They are his co-conspirators. They are people who have never held him to account. They have always been afraid to because they know he commands the MAGA base, which he still does. And it's shameful for them to just dismiss this out of hand without taking a look at what the actual charges are.
And Alice, as Maria rightly points out, still so much that we don't know and much to digest. But can you give us a sense of the spectrum of reaction that we're seeing from Republicans at this stage?
Sure, and I agree with my dear friend Maria on that point, is that we actually do need to wait and find out more details in terms of what the actual evidence is and what are the documents and what is the supporting information that really allows the grand jury to go forward with this indictment. But based on what we see right now, this is not right. This is unfair, and some have even called this un-American. I've spoken with many Republicans and reading accounts by many Republicans, and they view this as an extreme overreach by a political opponent of Donald Trump. And you can't get much more polar opposite in the Republican Party right now than former President Trump and his chief 2024 rival, Ron DeSantis. And both of them have a similar take on this. Donald Trump, his response to this is a weaponization of the justice system in order to attack a political rival. Ron DeSantis, the governor of Florida, says this is a weaponization of the legal system to advance a political agenda. That is how Republicans are seeing this, and there is no way you're going to change their minds. This is what Donald Trump is saying. This is what his friends in the media are saying, and this trickles down. Members of Congress are fully in step with this line of thinking because they are seeing it for what it is. And this is a DA that ran and campaigned on saying that this case would be a top priority for him. And this case, which was passed over by the Federal Election Commission as well as the Department of Justice because they didn't see this was worth moving forward on, he took it upon himself to move forward, and he is a strong Democrat. This will go before a jury in a very liberal district in New York. And many Republicans view this as nothing more than an attempt to prevent Donald Trump from moving forward in 2024. I hate to say this to them. This is going to embolden his supporters. And look, as a Republican who would love nothing more than Donald Trump to leave the political arena so we can nominate someone that is less toxic than him, I would just love nothing more to see him leave. This is going to embolden him, and I fear it will help him in the primary process, but again, this will be detrimental in a general election.
And Maria, taking into consideration what Alice is saying there about emboldening Trump supporters and also the most
Mhm.
influential figures in the Republican Party adding their weight to these claims that this is a political witch hunt, how concerned are you about increased political acrimony, possibly demonstrations or even violence resulting from this?
Oh, absolutely incredibly concerned about that, Bianca. And the sad part about that is Republicans not only don't seem to care, but they are pouring fuel on that fire, starting with Donald Trump, who is the one who called for protests, who is the one who talked about death and destruction if this indictment came down, who is the one, let's remember, who was the one who emboldened the insurgency that happened on January 6th. And by the way, let's see when that indictment comes down, and let's see if Republicans also try to put that aside, saying that that is just strictly political.
Mm,
Donald Trump is in a world of legal hurt. And the more that Republicans try to make sure that he is continues to be off the hook, that continue that the more that they try to make excuses for him, saying that this is a witch hunt. Well, you know what? A witch hunt is actually appropriate when there is a witch. And Donald Trump is the one who brought all of this onto himself. And if you look at Michael Cohen, the one who actually went to jail for doing everything that Trump told him to do in this case, the one that's coming down with this indictment. He talked about how everything that he did because Donald Trump told him to do that. And let's remember that he went to jail under the Justice Department of Donald Trump. And so
mm,
all of these issues are the same issues that are alive and well in this indictment. Sources say that there are more than 30 charges in that indictment. And again, I want to remind my good friend Alice, this was not something that Alvin Bragg decided to indict on. He simply put together the grand jury, presented the evidence, and this
mm.
is a grand jury made up of conscientious, everyday Americans who saw that evidence. They are not Democrats, they are not liberals, they are not anti Trumpers, they are everyday Americans doing their job, looked at this evidence and said, yes, there is more than enough here to move forward. And you know what else, Bianca? You know what else this process has proven? That no one is above the law, not even a former president of the United States.
Well, Alice Stewart and Maria Cardona, I wish we had more time to talk specifically on that last
Mhm.
point and the effect that this is having on Americans' perceptions of their own constitution and themselves, the fact that someone running for president can be facing criminal charges. But thank you both so much.
Thank you so much,
Thanks,
Bianca.
Bianca.